Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight for this special meeting of the City Council. It is 5 after 5, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Erin, could we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Borelli? Here. Councilmember Thomas?
Here.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember No?
Here.
And Vice Mayor Saragosa?
Here.
All right. The next item is item 3, announcements to the public. Are there any announcements my council colleagues would like to make? I would like to make just one announcement, and that is that Trip to Green is happening the first weekend of August, the first weekend of September, and the first weekend of October. That includes all 3 days of Labor Day weekend, and Trip to Green is a pilot project that we have been working on with Caltrans and El Dorado Transportation Commission to try to address a lot of the regional tourism traffic that really impacts the city during the fall. So what's going to happen on those weekend days is the lights on Highway 50 will be turned green from 8 in the morning until 8 at night. And flyers have gone out in utility bills, and there's information on the city's website. There's information on the city's Facebook page, and you can get in touch with us if you have any questions. All right? That brings us to item 4, adoption of the agenda.
Move for adoption.
Second. All right, we have a first and a second. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
All right. Item 5, this is 5.1. Consider request by El Dorado County to assist in funding the proposed Homeless Navigation Center in the amount of $287,500 and authorize the city manager to notify the county of this action prior to their board meeting on July 26, 2022. And Mr. Morris has this.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good to be here with you tonight. First of all, I want to say I'll do the best I can in completing this report. It was kind of short and put together rushed, but hopefully we have all the information. We do have a lot of information that we've gathered, and I've provided that to you in front of you tonight since the report actually went out. And those reports for the public are all on the table in the back. Hopefully there's still some there if anyone wants copies of those to review. So as you know, Council, earlier this year, the county identified, after working with the city on the issue, potential sites for both short and long-term navigation centers. After review of the potential sites, the primary site identified was the Perks Court site that is under discussion tonight, just off of Missouri Flat Road. We also discussed the potential, especially for short-term, a couple of other sites, but primarily we focused on the Perks Court site. Since that time, the county has done a lot of work evaluating the sites. They did actually pursue, for short term, the 2 hotels on Upper Broadway that were discussed. After a lot of discussion and negotiation with the owners, those did not work out for short-term sites, and those were eliminated for further consideration. So since that time, there's been a lot of work, as mentioned, regarding the feasibility of Perks Court. And I have had regular updates working with Daniel Del Monte, the Interim Director of Health and Human Services, since that time. And we have looked at various issues that have come up, tried to resolve those and move forward. So I want to thank Daniel he's continually kept me updated on what is happening. I've tried to pass that information on to you as the City Council. And he's done a great job in my mind. I also want to thank Wendy Thomas, Supervisor Thomas, who was in the audience tonight, and for her work on this and on the county level and keep it moving. So As you know, over the past several years, we have seen a steady increase in the number of homeless in our city. Seems to come and go a little bit, but the flow seems to continue. They're constantly here, despite actions that have been taken to try and handle some of that concern. And then, as you know, the Martin versus Boise case that came out severely impacted how we can treat them and how we can try to work with them, and especially in terms of illegal camping. As you know, the city currently has what I believe is, and I'm pretty certain, is the largest and most impactful illegal homeless camp in the county, and that is located on Upper Broadway. I estimate the number of people in those camps is probably between 50 and 60 people in that range. Is that correct, Jill? Do you think? A little bit higher, 50 to 70 maybe. And constantly changing. We're seeing new people come in all the time also. So for those reasons, we are heavily impacted by what is going on with the homeless situation. Recently, the county has concluded their feasibility study for Perks Court, gone through the analysis, determined what everything needs to be done, and you have a brief report, the county's report tonight that is attached to my agenda. In addition, I included tonight, I gave you a copy of a report from the county it's basically one of the attachments, Exhibit A to the Navigation Center contract that they have. I included that because it has a little bit of detail. The full contract was actually 287 pages. I did not print the whole thing for you, but you're welcome to look at that if you'd like to. But it does have, it goes into the details about soils and et cetera, and all of those details as far as what they need to know in putting the center out there. But the document I gave you tonight, if you turn back a little bit farther into it, you will see the proposed costs of what they are proposing to put out there. And this includes, Dave, if you could pull up, it's probably the third one over, fourth, yeah, that one. Pull up that, please. This might be a little bit hard to see. Aaron, could you turn those lights down a little bit? But this is actually the Navigation Center site located on Perks Court. And I know it's hard to see, so I apologize for that. I think included in this packet for the public that has it, and councils have it on the back of this document. You should have a copy of that map also. Still kind of small, but it's the very last page on that document for you to look at. And then the page before that, Dave, if you could bring up, I just wanted for context to let you know where this is at. Bring up the very last document. This is to give you a good idea of where it's at on Perks Court. So originally, if you're familiar with Perks Court, there have been some facilities that have been there in the past, but they're down at the end of the road. And Dave, can you kind of point your arrow to where those are? Go down. No, not there. No, other direction. Right there where you can see that white spot. That's kind of where initially we thought this may end up. And there's some old buildings, pretty much all need to be torn down and demolished. Some are burned out and et cetera. Not good for anything. But so the actual site, though, that is being considered is this site right here. So you can see Missouri Flat Road. You can see the El Dorado Freeway, Highway 50 right there. So kind of give you some context of where that location is. So not too far from the intersection of Perks Court and Missouri Flat Road. So if you have questions about this site or the site plan that was up before, and Dave, you can put the site plan back up maybe. I'll talk about that just briefly. I have not been closely involved with the creation of the site plan, but I will tell you it has the large site on there you can see. That is the actual navigation center, the sprung structure that we have discussed. Included down below, there are restrooms for male and female, of course, and showers for male and female. There's office buildings and storage buildings also. So that's the total of everything that is there. And if you read down through the report that shows the costs, you get a better idea of what all it takes to do this. For example, all of these structures that you see there, are on concrete pads. So there'll be concrete pads poured for each of those different functions that you see. In addition, for example, there's a garbage dumpster that is also in a block enclosure. So all of those things are costs that add up and increase the cost of doing this. The parking lot, paved parking lot, as I understand, and et cetera. Other areas, there's outdoor seating areas for like picnic tables and stuff like that, gathering places also. So anyway, I don't have a lot of detail on this. I just got this today and reviewed it a little bit, so that's just there for your information as far as what they're planning, and gives you a good idea of why the costs are where they are. The total cost, as you know, that has been proposed for this is $3.659 million. And as the county went through this, they identified funding to handle that. And let me get my page here that I need. Of that amount, they have $2.927 million in grant funding. They are contributing $402,000 of I should have looked at the other number. Actually, the grant funding went up to $2.971 million, I believe is the number. And they're contributing approximately $400,000 from their ARPA funding, which they took from another program and contributed to this, and then left them a shortfall of $287,500. The reason we are here tonight is because of that number. And the county, in their report that will go to them, to the Board of Supervisors tomorrow night, is requesting that the city fund that $287,500. I wanted to quickly, I'm going to ask Dave Warren if he will pull up our ARPA funding to just give you a quick review of where we are on ARPA funding. There's a few pieces that have changed, and so I'll let him Dave, if you could just briefly walk through that, I'd appreciate it. And primarily, don't need to go detail in each one of the items, but primarily talking about where we are right now, what has been formally allocated, and what is, I think there's a section in there I'll call informally allocated at this point. So.
Right. Thank you, Cleve. So back in September 14th of 2021, the council provided direction to staff in how to allocate the ARPA funds, both year one and year two. And you may recall we received $1.3 million and some change in July of 2021, and we actually will be receiving another $1.3 this month. Of that amount, there was $760,182 that was set aside for broadband and homeless programs. And since that time, the council has identified other uses for those funds. And so as of to date, $338,909 is available for a contribution towards the proposed navigation center that you could appropriate for those purposes. So,
any questions about those ARPA fundings at this point, council? I think I just want to make sure you understood there is at least that $338,000. Now it does pretty much reduce the chance of using any for broadband if that goes that way, but there is the funding that could go towards this if you choose to do that. Back to my staff report here. So before you tonight is that consideration of whether or not to approve the funding. The reason that is coming to you actually before the board holds their meeting tomorrow is basically to improve the process and hopefully expedite the process in moving forward. If they have questions or do not decide to approve it until they have some agreement from the city council, that's only another delay, and my understanding it could delay at least a month or more if that happens. As it stands right now, the feasibility study and everything has been done to look at the timing for the utilities primarily. We are probably at least 6 months out. So we're estimating the earliest we could get in, have the facility up and operating is January of 2023 and could be a month or two after that. Just kind of a side note, not really for discussion tonight, we are looking at options of what we can do this fall to try and provide some sort of service to the homeless through those fall, winter months until this can be up and running. And so we're working on that and seeing what we can do. With that, I think that is all I had to add at this time. Options for you tonight are to approve the full amount, the $287,500. You could approve a partial amount and authorize staff to talk to the county about, how that works. Or you could not approve the funding and provide further direction to staff. The final thing I wanted to mention is I did receive a phone call actually an email and then a phone call from Bill Roby, who runs the Community Foundation today. He related to me that he has always been, the Community Foundation, always been a supporter of helping with homelessness and to see what they can do. And he feels that they would be willing and would want to see what ways they can support this effort. And so he basically offered and told me I could let the council know tonight that he thinks they could raise half of that $287,000 to go toward this. Now, I want to emphasize that whether or not that happened, if you want this to move forward, I would encourage you to consider allocating the full amount, and then if they can raise up to that amount or less or more, whatever, we would reimburse this ARPA fund with whatever amount that is, and therefore it could still go to some of the projects that we have set aside for that. So he will be meeting with his board on Thursday night, and will recommend that they pursue that to help fund the project, and he'll get back with me after that. So I think that's all I have. Happy to answer questions. I know that we have Wendy Thomas and Kimberly from county offices to help answer questions if you have any for them. Primarily for Kimberly, I believe, regarding the funding, but she probably has some other information that I don't have also. So if you'd like to ask them questions, they're available also.
Thank you, Cleve, for that thorough report. There was a lot more information than I was expecting, so that was great. To kind of kick off this process, I would like to make a couple of comments before going into questions. First, thank you, staff, for throwing this together on such short notice. I really appreciate your work and working through the weekend to make this happen, and thank you to my colleagues, too, for making themselves available for this important issue. I think we're all well aware that homelessness is a top concern for our residents and is a major contributing factor to the other top concern, which is wildfire danger. The county has really stepped up in a big way by investing a ton of staff time from HHS, legal, building, and planning to work towards this Perks Court project, which the city made clear was our desired option in terms of the sites. They are considering putting in $400,000 in their ARPA funds tomorrow. There's also going to be additional funding needs for road widening, and they're using all of the grant money available to the county and the COC to address homelessness services. The Perks Court has been a really challenging site in terms of utilities, and it's my hope for tonight that we can give the county the support that they need within our role as the city to eliminate one unknown, which is this funding gap, and also to do what we can to expedite this project and avoid further delays. The council has already taken many steps towards supporting a shelter and navigation center. We have unanimously voted to address homelessness as a strategic plan strategy. We have set aside the $760,182 of year one, year two ARPA funds for homelessness, broadband, and various other projects. Unfortunately, that amount has been whittled down substantially, but I think that we have shown that our intention was to take bold action on these matters and invest resources. On September 14th, 2021, we directed the city manager to work with county staff and our District 3 supervisor to pursue short and long-term shelter navigation solutions and to prioritize the Perks Court over all the other sites that fell within the city limits. Based on the direction of the Board of Supervisors and the City Council, county staff and city staff, respectively, have worked tirelessly and diligently towards this goal. So I feel that we should now put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, and support this project. And it's my hope that we can all get there tonight. I have some concerns. I have a feeling that there's other concerns that will come up. And I hope that we can discuss them, have them addressed, and feel like this is something that we can come together to support. So with that, I would like to open this up to questions to Cleve or to Kimberly with HHS or our district supervisor, Wendy Thomas, who's in the audience.
Okay, great. Thanks for everyone for being here. One of my questions is, whenever we send a request to the county, we usually come up with a formula and tell you how we got to where we got and how much we think the county should pay and how much the city should pay. We have lots of programs that are overlapping and serve both. I'm just wondering how the county came up with $400,000 for the county and $287,000 for the city. How was that formula brought together and those numbers come together? Thanks.
Would you like Kimberly with HHS to address that, or Cleve?
Anyone who's got the answer.
I'll take a shot at it first, and then I'll invite Wendy or Kimberly to address that. There was no formula, to my knowledge. They tried to pull every bit of funding that they had identified for homelessness. It's my understanding the $400,000 was already allocated to a program, but there was some question on exactly how that was going to meet the requirements that they wanted to use it for, and they elected to put that money over into this. The $287,000 at that point was just what was left that they did not have a source of funding immediately for to address it. Is that a good explanation? Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Michael, are you there? Do you have any questions?
Sorry, yes, I'm here. No questions at this point.
Okay. One concern that I have, and I've spoken to our supervisor, Wendy Thomas, about this and discussed it with Cleve as well, is I think that the city does have a responsibility to our residents to address this issue in collaboration with the county, and I certainly want to do that, and I want to get there. I just want to make certain that if we put this money towards this, that it is actually addressing the issues that we have within the city, and how to best do that. I think we can talk about, but that's really my main concern.
How do you mean?
Well, just if there's limited shelter beds and they were filled with non-city residents or something like that, I think that there's solutions to that. But I do just want to make sure that that's known, that we should be cognizant of that and making sure that the city funding goes to address the issues that we are having in the city.
Well, I have to. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
No, I was going to say. I was just along this. I had the same concern. What if they fill up, and then are we going to still be stuck with homeless camps? So how is that going to be addressed? Because that's the main purpose of all this, is to stop this situation that we've been dealing with for years, and it's just doing nothing but getting worse. And I agree. That is one of my concerns. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Would Wendy or Kimberly like to address maybe the referral process, or
Perfect. Good evening, Placerville City Council and staff, and I'd like to echo Mayor Taylor's, gratitude for coming together on such a short time, especially on your week off, during your time off, to have this discussion so there's clarity for the county tomorrow so we can move this forward expeditiously. As far as the funding for prioritization, the process for prioritization, I want to make it very clear that the county has not had this conversation yet. So I am not speaking for the Board of Supervisors, and certainly want to make that very clear. But all along, we have known that the primary purpose of this navigation center is to address campfires, the danger from illegal campfires, and to help those that are unhoused have a more productive path out of homelessness rather than living in places that are not meant for human habitation. And so with that lens, certainly the Martin versus Boise, the Chico settlement also will, I think, inform our path forward in being able to address that. And we'll be looking at and working collaboratively with the city, as we have done on this, to refer folks to the Navigation Center. And this will be a referral-only basis. And my understanding in speaking preliminary to staff is that this will not be a component of the Volunteers of America, that it will be Health and Human Services staff working directly with the Placerville Police Department and then working directly with the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office, not together, but separately, to address the needs within those jurisdictions. And I can imagine it might look something like prioritizing those places that have the largest impact of wildfire danger, in which the size of the camp is a primary factor in determining that impact. And so it will be I appreciate that it will be a very strong collaboration between the county and our local law enforcement partners to meet our local needs. I don't know if that helps answer the question. Once again, once we finish where we're going with the Navigation Center, that will be the next process that we turn our sights to, and it will be a collaborative process. So recognizing that the primary funding source of this potential Navigation Center are continuum of care, state and federal fundings that don't have jurisdictional boundaries. But.
Thank you, Wendy. So do you know, and you may not be able to answer this at this point, but do you know, will Health and Human Services have the discretion on how to place, or will it be mostly the law enforcement?
Once again, I can't answer completely because we haven't had that discussion, but it will be a very much a joint partnership between Health and Human Services and law enforcement, because certainly our law enforcement partners are the boots on the ground that know where these folks are. And certainly, in preliminary conversations with staff, the size of the camps and their proximity to potential dangers have are a primary factor in what we prioritize.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
One more question, and perhaps this one would be for Kimberly, but would it be possible to have the city involved in the development of the referral procedures, to have a seat at the table to make sure that our needs are?
I think a collaborative process makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Just like we've done on this. So absolutely, that sounds
okay.
That sounds good.
Great. Thank you.
You bet. Anything else on this?
Dennis, Patty?
No, I'm okay.
No. Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Wendy.
You bet. Thank you.
I think that last week previously at a Board of Supervisors meeting, I can't remember if it was the most recent one or the one before, but the sheriff's hot team gave a presentation, and they said that they have reduced the number of their homeless to, I believe the number was 22 in the unincorporated area of the county. And so I think oddly enough and coincidentally enough, it seems like ours has increased proportionally, but that's yet to be factually determined. But I do know that I've heard from several that there are several new faces in different parts of town that weren't previously there, and the numbers seem to have risen. So I do know that our city has a significant impact when the county does do what they do to move people around. So with that in mind, I think proportionally, I think that the city does have a significant need at this point in time greater than greater than the county. And I think that should be recognized in our process. I also understand that this is federal and state dollars that generally do, everything I've learned within the, working with, in the homeless arena with federal funding and state funding is that they do very much frown upon or restrict the amount of restrictions you can put on getting people into these camps. And I think we would have challenges if we tried to restrict it too much. But if we can work within the framework you talked about, I thought that was a great idea, being involved in that process and selection, and then recognizing that the need and the purpose that we have started, way back. This is one of the few times that we have had a joint agreement with the county and the city where the city and the county came together, had a meeting, worked through the process of getting to actually this point. And so this has been, if we can find a path to successful outcome, and successful outcome is different for everybody, but the path where we can work with the county on this, it has been years in the making, and not just this one-time emergency meeting that we have come together for. So I do look forward to a serious conversation about all the challenges with this, because I know that I've heard others voice some concerns, and I think they're worthy of conversation. Just like, who is going to be prioritized. And I think that's a critical issue. And I think, homeless is an umbrella in our county. It's not because I think that we could take some action, much like what the sheriff's department did, and then some of the homeless would be back out in the county, and it wouldn't be long before the county now starts saying we have a homeless problem again. And so I don't know that that's this bigger umbrella is probably a better approach than trying to compartmentalize this. So thank you very much. With that, I'll pause. Thank you.
Just one comment, along Dennis's point too, is whenever anything is proposed, as you well know, that all my years on the council, when there's a new project or anything that's talked about, people come up with the what ifs, and we can't allow that. We just can't, because what if? I mean, we have to. I think that the county's done a great job in looking at this, and I think we've certainly studied it to death. And we don't know the future. We just don't, and we just can't keep continuing the way it is, obviously. And like Dennis said, this is the first time we've really come together. We've got money. They've got money. And that was great news that Cleve shared with us, that Mr. Roby, that would really help the city out. Mm-hmm. So I just, I'm not going to certainly condemn it because of what ifs.
Thank you, Patty. Are there any other questions at this time? Michael?
Not sure he heard you.
Yeah, this is Michael. I guess, I don't know if it's so much as a question as I guess a comment at this point. I mean, the reality is we're being, again, asked to shoulder a disproportionate amount of the funding to make this happen. Any way you slice it, Placerville is going to be paying a disproportionate amount of funding to get this to work in what is really a 3-day conversation. Not even that. I mean, we all got calls on Saturday to have this discussion on Monday. But one, I guess I would have liked to have had more time to actually sit down and go through this, because at this point, it really is a gun to my head to say either you do this or it probably doesn't happen on Tuesday morning. So that's one. Two, we're now giving up, and I don't know if the county has done this. I'll defer to Wendy on this, but I don't want to diminish any of the work that's happened on this, but we are essentially giving up on our broadband endeavor in terms of the dollars that we had allocated to do that, because we'll have a sort of a small amount of dollars left out of our ARPA funds to do that. I don't know if the county has scraped the program in order to come up with the ability to do this project, but certainly, that's a big ask on our part to be able to do too. And I know, we're home. We are the center of the homeless population, but it isn't just. They aren't all just miraculously Placerville residents that somehow were housed and then suddenly became unhoused. So it's not a situation that's unique onto Placerville. I'm really heartened by the fact that Bill Roby has stepped up in a way that I think is tremendous. And I know we can't count on those dollars, but it's certainly something to take a look at. And I would certainly take him up on that if we were able to come to an agreement. But, that to me is a more appropriate sum, I think. I always knew the city should and would put up some funding, but to basically zero out our ARPA funds in order to do this, to me is a lot to take in at this point, especially with essentially, 24 hours to be able to digest this and then make a decision without, hardly any public input as well. I don't know who's sitting there in the audience because I can't see, but again, this is a very quick process. So those are my comments for now.
Thank you, Michael. We actually do have a lot in attendance tonight. We have a good attendance. So we will be moving on to public comment on this item soon. Any final questions or statements before we open it up to the public? Okay. At this point, we will open this item up to the public. So if you would like to speak on it, please step up to the podium. I appreciate it if you state your name for the record. It's voluntary. And please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Good evening. Kathy Lishman. I apologize for going first, but I have a League of Women Voters meeting at 6 o'clock. So one of the reasons that we're heavily impacted is because we're the only city on the western slope and we're the county seat. I have some questions. I think this is great that it's going in this direction. Once that $3 million is spent, almost $4 million, is that a long-term or a short-term navigation center? I wasn't clear about that. And if it's a short-term and use all the money for that, then what happens? The winter shelter, my question, if the city has some funds to put into the winter shelter, since this wouldn't be done till after the first of the year. So I'm not what-ifing, I'm just thinking ahead. And the broadband, that's an interesting thing to give up. But it was really and I found out from Wendy that there's 60 beds. So 60 beds isn't a lot, but short-term, long-term. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hi, my name's Linda Irwin. I have nothing prepared today, except that my husband and I drove down to Pertz Court today and took a look. We live across the river from Pertz Court, and several years ago, the homeless had broken into a home there, and it had almost burned to the ground. You can still see it sitting there right now. I talked to a gentleman who was picking up his mail today, and I asked him if he would care to come to this meeting today and the supervisor's meeting tomorrow. And his comment to me was that he was selling. If any homeless camp came down to Pertz Court on the Missouri Flat Road side, it would do nothing more than turn it into people under a freeway, such as in Portland or Seattle or San Francisco or Los Angeles. And it'll devalue my property quite a bit. So I'm concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Good evening, council and staff. I'm Maureen Dion Perry with the nonprofit organization Housing El Dorado. I was so pleased to see this detailed plan for our navigation center with a shelter. It's been a long time coming. And the city of Placerville has been such a compassionate partner in this work. I want to really emphasize that. You have shown your compassion and given freely as we requested and worked with you to get the building for the winter lodging program. And I would wager a hunk of change that most people had no idea there was a homeless shelter on Main Street in Placerville. Now we have a viable permanent project within our available budget except for this shortfall. I would like to emphasize that the city is going to save money on this project. Studies have shown that between $6,000 and $16,000 per person savings in law enforcement, public works, and health care. And it will improve lives. It will help get people off the streets and into more productive living. Also, studies have shown that there is not an increase in crime. There have been before and after studies when navigation centers have been put in, and there's no indication that crime increases, and there's no indication that there's a decrease in property values. I did a little literature search this afternoon as I was thinking about all of these issues, because it's hard to find the right place. I ask you to please support this project proposal in total, including the city's contributions. I am grateful for everyone's work in putting this together so rapidly. And I hope that, I know this is coming for the future, there will be a few months this winter before the center and the shelter open. And I hope that the city of Placerville or the county could identify a temporary building for our winter shelter. And to answer one of the questions about how long this is for, you know, the basic infrastructure investments are good for a long time. The buildings that will be erected have a minimum life of 10 years. In addition, the county does have 2 years of operational funding at this time, and there will be opportunities to obtain further grants during that 2-year process to continue the staffing and operation of the shelter by Volunteers of America. So let's finally get ourselves off the list of being only one of 4 locations in the state of California that do not have these important services for our residents. The time is now. With sincere gratitude to you and everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Sue Rodman, resident of Placerville. And I have seen our homeless people on the street and felt very sorry for them. And I realize that there is no perfect solution to the problem. The ideal solution is that everyone has a home, a job, food, and is independent. We do not have the ideal solution. And in the interest of humanity and caring for other human beings, we need to step up and keep Placerville a welcoming place. Placerville is the county seat. It is logical that people would come to Placerville for help. We have the resulting impacts, and so we bear some responsibility to help. When I did the math, the ask is about 8% of the total, which seems fair given that our population is maybe 8% of the county's population. And especially given the potential wildfire impacts. Have you all breathed a little smoke from the Oak Fire in the last few days? We need to do this. We need to move forward, and in the best way we've found so far. It has cost us more than this already in lost business, and the potential for catastrophic wildfire means we are living on borrowed time here in Placerville. Just ask the people in Grizzly Flat or any of the other communities that have been burned out. There is no perfect solution. But this is a way to move forward, and I think that we should go ahead and move forward and contribute this. There's going to be more money coming from broadband. I don't think that we need to worry too much about that, but we do need to take care of these people who are living on our street, who are camping in the brush, and have already started some fires that have had to be put out. So last year, when we had the thing that's going to happen next week, in fact,
National Night Out.
National Night Out. There was a fire started just above one of the neighborhoods that was participating in National Night Out. They were concerned. Thanks to our county fire and CAL FIRE, they got on it immediately in our police department, and they got it put out. But that could have taken out a whole section of Placerville. So I think this is at least one way to move forward and get something done finally. It's been 15 years since this has been going on, and we haven't done anything yet. So let's at least do this.
Thank you, Sue. And I apologize that our 3-minute timer is not working tonight. So we do have a timer going back here, and that's what that was. But I'm also hearing lots of dings from the audience. So if those in the audience could silence your phone, that would be appreciated. Any other comments?
Wendy Thomas, District 3 Supervisor. So during this public comment period, I just want, once again, thank you for your consideration. And I know this timing isn't ideal, but Mayor Taylor, I want to thank you for your leadership on this. I think some helpful context for your final deliberation might be helpful that I was not aware of this shortfall until our agenda item came out at the end of last week. And I hadn't sat down to read it until the end, like Thursday or Friday, when I realized that our agenda item showed a $687,000 shortfall. And recognizing that our staff, especially our Health and Human Services staff, has moved heaven and earth to do this feasibility in about 53 days. I mean, and if you've had a chance to read the contract with G&G Builders, potential contract that's on our agenda for tomorrow, it is a comprehensive document and a comprehensive feasibility study that I don't know how they got that accomplished in that amount of time. And I think the utility work that's necessary for Perks Court is over $1 million. So, I mean, just a tremendous heavy lift. And they have literally moved heaven and earth to get this done in a time frame that both your council and our Board of Supervisors, was expecting. So just extreme gratitude for them. And it's also fallen on Health and Human Services to identify all the funding for this. What's difficult is that our budget cycle is done. Now, we don't have a finalized budget, but, our adopted budget is finalized. So anything moving forward will require a 4/5 vote from our staff. And so our Health and Human Services staff was trying really, diligently to determine funding sources, and grateful that they found an additional $400,000 in ARPA funds from public health, because our original gap was $687,000. It's important to know that we still need to identify funding sources for the road work, which will be, a conversation that we'll be having tomorrow to meet the fire regulations from Diamond Fire. So we certainly want to adhere to any health and safety concerns that they have and meet those. So that will be an additional source that we'll be looking at. But I wanted to let you know that I recognize how precious your ARPA funds are. I've been on that side. I know discretionary dollars are precious, and I want to thank you for your consideration of that. You will help get this over the finish line in an expedited time frame, and I'm excited that we're finally on the point of decision where we can, then the county can take the ball, and run with this. Working collaboratively with the City of Placerville, we've made great strides in our collaboration, and that will only continue. This navigation center will give us the tools to connect people with resources so we can, work on improving, changing lives and improving not only the conditions within the city of Placerville, but for the county of El Dorado. So thank you for your partnership with us in this arena, and appreciate the discussion tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Thomas.
I appreciate the work all of you have done, and particularly Supervisor Thomas. And it all makes sense. It's a particularly good location. But, and I couldn't add anything that Michael Saragosa hasn't already said. He said it very well. It's a disproportionate amount that's being once again stuck on the city when we're not really the whole center of the problem. I do have some questions about how it would work with the police and the sheriff's office, because it's in the jurisdiction of the county, and I have faith in our city. I've seen them work in that same area where people responded quickly. I just don't know whether we'd be taxed on a long-term basis. As far as the concerns of people in the area, given what happened with Hangtown Haven years ago and what's the progeny since, I can understand that. Much of this is just face, and we're going to be asking what if, but it's still a lot of faith. There has to be a lot of people coming together. And the broadband, gosh, that's going to serve us all. I mean, it serves the economy of this county, this town. So that's why I hope you get the money somehow.
Thank you, Kirk.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Tim Irwin. I also live on Forney Road, across the river from this project that you're talking about. Now, what I hear is everybody's very positive about this. What I don't hear is there any solution to the problem? Is anybody trying to solve the problem? And I'll make a distinction. You have homeless and you have lowlifes. We have it all in this community. I go around my neighborhood once a week, pick up all the garbage. When I take it to the dumps, they tell me, well, you got to pay for this. You got to pay for that refrigerator. You got to pay for those tires. You know, I don't have any relief. Now, you sit there, you're talking about spending taxpayers' money like it's your money. It's our money. We put it into this community. The resident that I talked to out on Kirk's Court, he wanted no involvement. All he wanted to do was move out of the state, out of this county. How many people have we lost because of the same problem? The lowlifes and the homeless. Now, we're all compassionate when people are mentally ill. I'm not compassionate for people that are abusive to our society. I pick up their beer bottles, their liquor bottles. Now, we know that not everybody does that, but a significant percentage does. I see new people walking down the street of Placerville because we have all these great services. Should they be here? It used to be they said that they were residents of El Dorado County. I don't believe that anymore. Sacramento has topped San Francisco in homelessness. Have they solved the problem? No. When Reagan was president, he eliminated the sanitariums. Maybe we should be looking for something like that to solve the problem for the people that are mentally ill that need their problems solved and helped. But like one woman spoke, we'll give them a job, we'll give them a place to live. That doesn't work for very many. You can go up and down the state. It doesn't work for very many. San Francisco, Sacramento, anywhere you go, a lot of people want to stay out there in their landscape because they have communities now. They're considered, in a gang, they're considered their family. Now these are their family. They don't want to move into anything. So what are you going to do when you don't have, you get this facility built? That's great for how many beds you got. But what about all the others that don't want to move in there, that are still, they're impacting our rivers? I won't go into Weber Creek anymore. That's ridiculous. I won't go downstream and go in the river anymore at Weber Creek. We need to solve the problem, not just spend taxpayers' money and go, hey, that sounds like a great thing to do. We can help them. No, you're only going to help a small percentage. I'm all for helping the people that are mentally ill, that need help, our old veterans, and the like. But I'm not helping the 18-year-old kid with his girlfriend that his parents kicked him out of the house, so now they're up here in El Dorado County feeding off of me. I don't like that.
Mr. Irwin, please wrap up your comments. We've passed the 3 minutes.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name's Don Vanderkar. Sorry about my voice. Long time, 40-plus year resident of the city and the county. Over 3 decades ago, my wife and I, individually and collectively, have been working with homeless issues and have spent considerable effort in relating with them, in transporting them, and navigating with them as they seek to get out of homelessness. Our experience is that people do not want to be homeless. People are there for many reasons. They are flesh and blood human beings seeking to get out of what they are in. We have worked with churches, we have worked individually with Hangtown Haven, and have some feeling for many of our homeless friends. So we are encouraged by the actions of the county and the city, and what the city is considering doing now. And I would urge you to do what you can in terms of helping the individuals involved in getting them off the street and getting them into recovery programs. Unfortunately, my wife and I have also experienced many memorial services for those who have not been able to survive in the environment that they are in. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Don.
I have a timer.
Thank you.
I'm Peg Vanderkar from Placerville. Many years, as Don said, we are related. I wanted to speak from a little different position. I agree with what Jim said your name, or Jim Irwin. Thank you for your speaking. There are those problems, absolutely, and not every person who is without housing is the same. They are as different as people who are in housing. Mentally ill or rascals or lost their housing because they're on a fixed income and the rents have gone up. We all know those stories. We hear them on the news every day. It's nationwide. From a taxpayer point of view, I live in a potential direct course of a major wildfire that could be set easily, and we keep our bags packed constantly because it could happen anytime, not just from like the Oak Fire is doing down south. I think this stage that we're in finding some program for helping homeless folks is at a good stage, and I'm excited, and we've been working a long time on that. This is a lot of money, but if it's broken down into cost per year per person, I think Bill Roby did this in an email recently saying it's about $5,000 a year, which is smaller than the cost for all the other services that would be needed without this kind of a center. We've worked with people who have needed the navigation type of help, and they've been successful with it. We've also worked with people who refuse the navigation help. So there is that variety. I would encourage you to support this use of the ARPA funds. I think broadband is lovely, but the people on the streets are in our face all the time. Certainly down on Broadway they are, and everywhere else. And we need to act now because we have the opportunity now. We have the help. We have other kinds of state and federal funding, and it's time. And that's only 2 minutes, but I'm going to quit here. So please support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peg. All right, I see no one else stepping up to the podium, so I'm going to close public comment at this time. I want to thank everyone that came to the special meeting and spoke and shared their feedback with us. And there were a lot of good questions that came up, so I do want to take a couple minutes just to address a couple things. First, for those that are very concerned and skeptical of this, I hear you. My personal belief is that we need to be finding solutions to those that want help and strong law enforcement to those that are breaking our laws. However, we cannot use law enforcement until we have a place that people can go to with a shelter based on the Martin v. Boise case. So that is a large reason why the county and the city have come together to create this shelter so that we can give our law enforcement the tools that they need to enforce our laws and keep the community safe. But I sympathize with you. I know that it is really infuriating to see people disrespecting private property and the city and the county, and it's a tough situation. Of all the thinking that's been done about this is the most the only really legal option that we have to be able to enforce our laws and our anti-camping ordinances. With broadband, I understand that this is the amount of money would cut in quite a bit to the amount that we have for broadband, but I don't by any means plan on scrapping that program. Cleve, there's additional savings that we had allocated to other programs that we will need to reallocate. Do we know at all how much that is?
We don't really have those
Ballpark.
final amounts yet.
Okay.
Some of it's related to the vegetation management program
Yeah.
we have. We have some other costs we'll be proposing at your next meeting, but I do believe there will be some savings there still. There's a couple other things that Mr. Warren and I talked about today in terms of you allocated some funding for utility accounts that were people that were not able to pay for their utilities. There's a state program that will assist with that has now been put in place that Dave informed me of today. So potentially you could consider whether or not those funds are needed for those programs. So there is some flexibility in there. There's some things we just need to sort it all out and see where we're going with it. So I can't tell you what those will be
Okay.
yet, but I do believe there will be some savings in some of those areas.
Okay, and if the Community Foundation feels confident that they're able to contribute to this, that would also, I know that we can't completely count on that, but that would also allow us to put more money towards broadband.
Well, even if they didn't come up with half, if they came up with a quarter, I mean, that's a terrific, boost for us and would certainly go a long way in helping us to not have to eliminate. Carrie, I was going to, I'm not sure that it's clear what you were saying about why this is, why we need to do this to give more power for our police. Could you explain maybe a little bit more in a nutshell, and maybe Joe can talk about this, but if we have a place to take people to, a legal place, and they choose to say no, then you can immediately ask them to leave town, right?
Well, no, not to leave town, but they would be subject to violations of our city ordinances, specifically the no camping ordinance. So the probability is there are going to be those folks who don't want to conform, and that's where we step in. And we have, once the shelter is in place, then we have laws that will support our actions. Currently, we don't. We have no we have an ordinance on the books, but because of the decision out of Boise, we can't enforce that ordinance at this time.
But how much grip does that, or teeth does that give you? I mean, you can cite them, and my understanding is they go to court or they're in jail and 2 days later they're out. So
Typically, they'll self-displace because they don't want the law enforcement contact. They're so far out of the societal or social norms that they don't want governmental contact. They want to continue to engage in normally activities that are illegal, and when we show up, it kind of ruins that for them. So we have found previously when we were enforcing our no camping ordinance that all it really took was once, and then they would displace. And that kind of, full transparency, when we were enforcing our no camping ordinance, we saw our homeless population decrease, and the county saw their population increase, specifically behind Walmart and the old Kmart.
Right.
So that's what's happening now with the county efforts. They're not driving them into town. It's that population is. We have seen that they self-displace and then they end up in Placerville.
Well, I think this is a real important issue. I mean,
Absolutely.
This part of it, because it really helps people understand in another way why this is going to help and how.
Sure. To try to not disparage it, to oversimplify it, we're separating the wheat from the chaff. Those folks that we know will have a successful transition out of homelessness will engage in those activities at the Navigation Center. Those folks that don't, if they want to be the nail that sticks up, will be the hammer.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Couple other things in terms of the concern that this will be people sleeping under the bridge and it will just be a mess. And this is not just bunk beds for people to crash on. This is a fully staffed navigation center. There will be support staff there at all times. So I think a lot of the fears that go along with a lot of other types of shelters, it's our hope and expectation that those will not come to pass at this place. And then in terms of short-term and long-term, Supervisor Thomas or Cleve, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that this investment is for the short-term navigation. That is what there is currently funding for. However, the state of California is not going to stop, and neither is the federal government. They will not stop funding homelessness in the next decade or beyond. So it's the assumption that when we start down this path, more funding for long-term solutions will come forward. Is that, yeah?
I think that's a good explanation. Wendy can add to it, but this is exactly what you said, the short term. I know I questioned early on the idea of the sprung structure that we're using. They said that cannot be considered permanent, and yet I believe it has a 50-year warranty on it, and I consider 50 years pretty permanent myself. Apparently others don't, but so I think that there is something to be said for that. You look at all the improvements they're putting in, concrete foundations for these facilities. Now, some of the other facilities that they'll be dropping down on there, for example, the showers and restroom facilities, may perhaps have a shorter than the 50-year life. But many of these facilities, I think, could be moved over into long-term facilities going forward if that's what we choose to do. So.
I agree with you, Cleve. Although I want to be very clear, this is a short-term facility, and it also gives us a chance to pilot this concept and figure out, does this work for the city and the county and our law enforcement partners? And if it doesn't, we'll pivot. And so this is absolutely a short term. And once this gets up and running, and working collaboratively, if we decide that this is, a good long-term site, we will have those discussions. They will be public. If we decide it's not, we will start looking for other locations. This will be an evolving issue, but this is absolutely a short-term project. And we have funding for 2 years. And I also briefly wanted to also mention it's important. I also absolutely feel for community concerns. There's never a good location. But I do want to let you know that this will be a zero tolerance, would have a zero tolerance drug policy. So this will not be a free-for-all. It will be professionally managed by the Volunteers of America with zero tolerance. And I think that's important to understand. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Wendy. Okay. With that, I will bring it back to the council for more discussion.
Well, first I just want to say to Tim, I understand about cleaning up after camps. I was looking back through my notes, and I think some of the first camps I was cleaning up was back in 2011, back behind Walmart. Again, back in 2015, major cleanups behind Walmart, which is in the county, not in the city. So to kind of to Dennis's point, the efforts, intentionally or unintentionally, of the HOT team have been pushing some of those issues into the city. So when we look and we say, oh, it's a city problem, well, there's a reason it's a city problem. And there's several reasons. But I really want to bring it back to our agenda item. And our agenda item is this funding request. It's not to discuss, the site that's already been decided. That's all at the county level, those discussions. We have a request from the county for funding, and that's what I want to talk about. And just like when we send them requests, we evaluate what our fair share of that request is. And the county's building a navigation center and a homeless shelter. They're receiving nearly $3 million in grant funding for construction to do so. The shortfall is $687,500. That's roughly 2% of the ARPA funds that the county received. That seems like a reasonable amount, and I want to recognize that the reason we're having this discussion is because the county did not designate any of their ARPA funds to address homelessness, whereas we did. The county, they designated 5% of their ARPA funds to give to nonprofits. So it doesn't really seem unreasonable when the county gave 5% of their ARPA funds to nonprofits that 2% of theirs should be covering this cost, quite frankly. The county is requesting the city pay $287,500, which breaks down to the county paying 58% of the shortfall and the city paying 42% of the shortfall. When you look at those numbers, the city is 6% of the Western Slope population. We're not 42% of the slope population. So I have some issues with that, where the county wants to use only 1% of their ARPA funds, and they want the city to use over 10% of their ARPA funds to close this gap. I mean, quite honestly, it seems like the county's just coming up with another reason to bail out of the shelter at the last minute again. We saw it happen at Pollock Pines, and now over a couple $100,000, the county's going to say it can't happen because they have $37 million they received in ARPA funds. They're only willing to put up $400,000. These numbers don't really resonate with me at all. I would make the argument that 6% of the city population is what we should be paying of that shortfall, and which would be $41,250. That seems like our reasonable number to pay of that shortfall. I know that there are lots of options to perhaps cover that shortfall. Like I said, I still don't understand why the county can't cover that shortfall. They received $37 million. We received $2.6 million. And in terms of what we have put aside for homeless, when that shelter opens, there are going to be costs to the city. There are going to be cleanup costs. There are going to be unintended consequences we can't see, we can't foresee what happens. If we blow our wad, we're going to have no money to try to balance what goes on once that shelter opens. And so it doesn't make sense to me. But as we were talking through this, something occurred to me. And we're talking about broadband. And the county received $3.8 million in broadband funds from the CARES Act. So my question, we're really being pressured to cover this cost. There's lots of conversations that can happen. What can the El Dorado Community Foundation do? What can the Upper Room do? Those are conversations typically we'd be able to have, but we're always, fire, you have to hurry up and make a decision, and that's really the frustrating part about this. But if the city were to agree to do the $287,000, Wendy, could the county agree to bring $250,000 of your $3.8 broadband funding to the city? Because we're just talking about shuffling pots of money. And so that's where I'm thinking that it's a win-win. If we agree to put up that money, but the county agrees to bring their grant funding back to the city so that we can keep our project, our goals, and our funding going. I'll stop that for now.
Okay. Was that a question that you wanted Supervisor Thomas to respond to?
I'm not guessing she knows the answer, but I'm just saying that's how I feel that there's a path to getting there.
Just a couple of thoughts on that. I think when you're comparing ARPA to ARPA, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate you looking for a fair, just fairness in this arrangement. I really appreciate that. Comparing to ARPA, yes, there's an imbalance for sure, but the county also will have several $100,000 most likely in road widening. That isn't factored in here that they will have to come up with. There's also a huge amount of staff time that they've invested in this, which I don't know what the numbers would be, but I have a feeling based on, the cost of staff time. I mean, we know how valuable staff time is here at the city, that would be equivalent to several $1,000s at this point, if not substantially more. So yes, comparing ARPA to ARPA, there's an imbalance. I think when you look at the big picture, the county really has stepped up. And one other thing that I just want to make a point of is, it may not be a completely fair arrangement, but there's political reality at stake here. And this, getting to where we are now, was politically very challenging for the Board of Supervisors, largely because only 1 in 5 sees the problem in Placerville, and their residents and her residents feel like it's her problem. The other supervisors do not have that pressure. So the fact that we have politically arrived at this situation is somewhat of a miracle in itself, and I think that we need to recognize that for just the political reality that it is, and still try to find a path forward.
Well, in terms of the staff time, I just want to point out that El Dorado County provides health and human services for the entire county. That's their role and responsibility. It doesn't exclude the city of Placerville. It doesn't exclude the city of South Lake Tahoe. That is their realm. So just earlier this year, you were upset that the county really wasn't providing their fair share of the pool funding that we were asking. Well, that didn't include staff time. We didn't include all of our staff time. We were just looking at the number. And so, I mean, in terms of staff time, if you want to look what the city of Placerville has done in the last decade, because the county would not address this issue at all, the costs to our police department, the cost to our staff, I would argue that that's pretty much a wash. Staff time is a wash in terms of what the city has continually tried to do in the last decade, while the county has done absolutely nothing. I hear what you're saying, that they're trying to move forward, and we're making progress, but they need to do their fair share and not be overburdening the city. I'm willing to do our fair share, but come on. It's $37 million, and it was exactly intended for what we're talking about. They didn't put any aside. They got to rearrange a few things to come up with a couple $100 more. That is not unreasonable.
There are so many different competing ideas and concepts with this. You have, who of the homeless are we helping, and who is going to be those that are the nuisance are still going to continue to be a nuisance. Those that want help are going to get help, and we're going to. What was it? Cheyenne at one point said you can count on maybe 50% of the people who are currently homeless and utilizing our space, the city property to camp in, will actually consider using services. And so if we look at those numbers, you got 50 well, let's go with 70. You said 50 to 70 plus 22 that the county seems to think is their total number. That's what, 90, 92. I know. There's a certain giggle factor to that, but that's their number. There's that. I listen, Jim, I hear what you're saying. One of the benefits of doing a program like this is that it gives our police the opportunity to actually go in and do enforcement on public property where we didn't have that, and on private property. It gives them the opportunity to do the enforcement, and the sheriffs will also have that opportunity to enforce the laws that are actually on the books, and otherwise we literally cannot do that. And so the challenges that you see right now, we have a really hard time enforcing, and whether they're under a bridge or somewhere else, we have a hard time enforcing. What we end up doing is spending thousands and thousands, and probably well over $100,000 in the last 3 years of cleanup for homeless camps in the city alone. So it's, there's a significant cost. The call volume to these homeless camps and the things that are going on related to homelessness in the city, those call volumes will have a different ending now because they can actually provide some enforcement. And I agree, there's certain people that want help, and that we need to find an opportunity to give them help, and there's ones that don't want help, and we'll give them opportunity to understand why they should look for help. I think that's an important thing that we can do, because sometimes they need encouragement, and recognizing that the what I call bad behavior or inappropriate behavior, for some people, we can work with. One of the other opportunities this gives us is to catch homelessness early on in the process. We don't have a great system for catching homelessness early on, which makes homelessness even worse. I get the cost. I've struggled with that myself. Your numbers you're slightly generous, because a lot of this is county property and they're doing the work there. And so they are receiving some of the benefit of all of this that's going on. I look at the call volume for our city police officers and the amount of stress we're putting on them, and that's, there's so many competing, there's this side, but then there's this side, and there is all the results of homelessness in the city. If we're doing this, we're giving up on broadband. Well, we're not giving up broadband. There's the what if we get more money for broadband with matching dollars, and what if El Dorado Community Foundation? That's an awkward conversation. If we give them money now, will El Dorado Community Foundation say, well, we'll reimburse the city? I mean, that's kind of an awkward conversation at this point. And so I don't know that we can, honestly rely on the El Dorado County Foundation doing that. It would be great to reimburse the city, because we are really putting up a disproportionate share of the funds if we do this, and that's a struggle. The county staff did a lot of work on there, and how much is that? There's no dollar attached to that, and that's a struggle. If you look at the work they've done, it's monumental. Could we have ever done that work? And the answer is no. If we do this at this moment, or if we don't do this at this moment, is it going to be like a deal breaker? I don't know. What if we don't do it, and it is a deal breaker? What if we do? It's what if, right? What else do I have in my notes? 8% of the funds. Somebody mentioned 8% of the funds. Well, it's really not 8%, because 8%, why did you say 8%? Oh, it's because it goes on, because 8% of the ARPA funds is based on population. And, no matter what we do, no matter how much we don't want to have homeless in the city, we're going to continue to have homeless in the city, unless we do something that gives our police officers opportunities to enforce. And to me, what is that worth for our community, for our business districts, whether it's Main Street, Broadway, or Placerville Drive? They all are impacted in one way or another. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there for now. I really struggle because there's so many different different ways to compare these dollars and the benefit of doing this and the detriment of doing this and how much of it our ARPA dollars are compared to the counties. Those are real numbers. I mean, you're not just pulling these things out of the sky. They're facts. And then what's the benefit to our community to doing this, even if it is disproportionate? And we have a disproportionate impact. And yes, conversely, the county's supposed to be doing this. And we have struggled back and forth trying to find a place. Well, we don't want it on this place, and we don't want it on this place. We don't want it in the city over here. We want to have the county have five locations, and really they can't afford 5 locations. They can afford 1, and they put it there. And it's a place that's going to have a lower impact to the city than if it was in certain places around the city, whether it was down on Placerville Drive or up here on Broadway. It's all these things are out there, and we have the opportunity to maybe do something here that we haven't done before. And I'm going on because I want to demonstrate to the public that there's a lot of thought on everybody's mind about how to do this and why. And it's not just we're sticking it to them or sticking it this way, or we're just not going to do anything because it doesn't make sense. It's just there's a lot to this, and I'm done for now.
I was thinking along the lines that Kara was talking about, that we have our supervisor fighting for us. We have one supervisor, and the rest, I think they care, but, and to Dennis's point, these numbers that I was appalled. There's no way that these numbers are right. I think that therein lies the problem. They don't have what we have. For some reason, I don't know where their homeless are in their areas, but apparently they're not creating the problems that we have here. And so therefore, those supervisors are not plagued with what we're experiencing. There's just a thought on that. But I agree with Jackie and Michael that these numbers are way lopsided. But again, we've got to do something. We've just got to do something. And we keep tossing this ball back and forth, and it's, I don't think, going to ever get any better or change.
Thank you, Patty.
Hey, everybody, this is Michael. I think, so, let me think this through. I think that one danger is always thinking that the deal in front of you is the only deal that you have, and when you're so wrapped up in it, sometimes it looks that way. I've been around enough legislative battles and campaigns and other things to know that there never is actually a done deal on just about anything until the ink is signed. That's why I really have a hard time thinking that this is the best final and last on this whole thing. I do think it's inequitable in terms of the dollars that are being asked. And I'm just looking. I want a navigation center. I think it'll be helpful, and I think it'll be helpful because I think it'll, as Councilman Thomas said, it'll be able to allow us to enforce our no camping laws. I have no illusions about the success rate of a navigation center. In 2015, Sacramento had 2,659 homeless people. In 2022, they have 9,278. As the gentleman that spoke earlier during public comment stated, Sacramento has surpassed San Francisco in the amount of homeless folks. There's 1,100 beds currently in the city of Sacramento. It costs about $44 million a year to operate those, and those are just a hard cost for the actual shelters. It doesn't include any soft costs that are staff time, sheriffs, PD, things like that. So I have no illusions about the success rate of what a navigation center will bring. If I thought one would work really well, all of us across the Ninth Circuit would be using the exact same program. It would be the model that lifted people out of homelessness put them into permanent housing and have them move on. So, to me, this is an end to enforce our rules in our city. And if some people get helped along the way, that is obviously a wonderful thing. But again, no illusion that it's actually going to have a significant impact in moving people out, because I haven't seen one program left in the country that has done that in any significant way. And again, we'd all be doing the same thing if that was the case. I still would like to see a better slice of the funds between the county and the state. I'll go back to the Roby thing. I think that's great. I have to look at this as, yes, by far, homelessness is the biggest problem that is facing Placerville residents going forward, now and probably going forward into the near and immediate future. However, we also have a one-time opportunity with ARPA funds and with any funding that we have to do what's the highest and best use for the city. And I do think that we need the county to step in the way. And I get the politics. I get the fact that there's probably a majority of supervisors that don't feel the same way about homelessness. The fact that there is a hot team proclamation tomorrow about the work that's been going on is testament to that, I think. Nonetheless, this is still a significant operation that the county has to do as well. And again, I don't like to negotiate against myself in an open forum, and I don't want to, but I feel like that's what's happening here today. And I just think that we should buckle down and get the best deal we can. And I don't think tonight is the best deal that we can get. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on some of the kind of assumptions that have been, I don't want to say presented, but if we spend this $287,000, some people, I think, have presented that this is going to solve our problem and we're going to be able to do something and things are going to happen. Now, all you have to do is go north to Auburn, where they have a county shelter just outside the city. They now have a fenced area where they have to keep all the people waiting to get in the shelter. This has not solved the homeless problem in the city of Auburn, because they have, and I said, so why do you have a problem? Well, we have a lot of people who don't want to go in the shelter. And so, according to our plan, we'll just enforce that and they'll go away. Well, when they're hiding and doing all the things they're doing, enforcement's difficult when you have a small department like we do. And so I don't want this sold as this is the solution. We're going to do this. This is going to work. And my problem with it is I think that we're still going to have residual problems after the navigation center opens. And by giving all of our money, we're not going to have any money to do anything afterwards. I mean, how much is it going to cost to clean up Broadway? Where is that in our budget? And so I kind of feel the way Michael does is we haven't been able to do all the figures to say, what is this actually going to cost us? What are going to be the residual effects after that shelter opens? And I just think there's more to this conversation still.
Was it the last meeting, or, well, I don't know, who knows, I'm losing track, that we talked, and I believe it was Ms. Perry that talked about the navigation center and the success rate that they've had, the statistics that showed that how they went further than, and certainly addressing some of the things that we're talking about. That it was not like a guarantee, but it was something along those lines. That the program that they initiate and the way they handle it, that and their success rate. Does anybody? Do you remember that? And I don't know whether they still are planning that, or whether that would make any difference in giving us some sort of comfort in knowing
The success rate of the Pathways project?
in the way it was that this navigation center would be handled.
Real briefly, Maureen is the executive director of Housing El Dorado. If you wouldn't mind, if you have that number, you could step up and provide that answer real quickly. I will just say that this is not going to be the same program. It's going to be operated by Volunteers of America.
I get it, but
on
it's
a much larger scale.
Yeah.
But
that number on the tip of my tongue in terms of the number of Pathways people who got into housing or got jobs. The numbers that I gave you were related to the savings per person in law enforcement, public works, and healthcare, and the studies that indicated no increase in crime or decrease in property values. I don't have any immediate statistics, and I'm sure they're out there. It would have been a good thing to look at the outcomes from, like the Volunteers of America, X Street Shelter in Sacramento, which is very much like what we're going to have.
Thank you.
So
Sorry.
could I ask her a question? Or I'll ask you to ask her.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I wanted to address what Jackie was sharing with us about the homeless over in Auburn, and if you know anything about that and why it hasn't been a success.
I can't say that I do. I think it's important to consider that this is not going to solve everything. This is step one of kind of like basic providing shelter and support services through the Navigation Center. Housing El Dorado, we need affordable housing. We need shared housing. We need supportive housing in order for people to have places to go. So this is only one step in the direction that we need to go to solve this very complex problem. It's not going to solve it. I'm under no illusion that one navigation center and shelter for 60 people is going to completely solve City of Placerville's homeless problems. Sorry. I wish it would, but there's going to be additional phases of the work that's being done. And I think then, we're behind the 8 ball in many ways. And, the affordable housing situation's terrible. That's why Housing El Dorado is getting out of the shelter business and into development of affordable housing and shared housing and different ways for people to go after they're in the navigation center so other people can come in. That's the idea, is you come in, you get service, and you leave. And some more people come in, get services, and leave.
Thank you, Maureen.
Mayor, I think Supervisor Thomas had something to add to this conversation.
Please.
Thank you. I do have some statistics. Thank you very much, Maureen, for that background. I think perhaps a good analogy, we've had the opportunity to kind of test this locally with Project Room Key, which operated for 26 months through the pandemic. And this took homeless folks that were incredibly vulnerable inside the city limits and in the county. And in those 26 months, we were able to get folks stable with housing and wrap services around them. And of those 107 clients that went through the program, 42 individuals have now been successfully placed in permanent housing. 42 out of 107. 24 individuals have been successfully placed in temporary housing. 8 individuals exited for short-term or long-term institutional settings. 30 chose not to take advantage of the program and exited without an identified homeless housing situation. That was 30. 2 individuals went to jail, and 1 passed away during that 26 months. So out of the 107 clients locally, we had a 70% success rate in placing individuals with housing. Now, is that exactly how this navigation center will work? We don't know, but I think this is perhaps an interesting analogy that may give us some clue as to what stable housing with wraparound services can provide. So hopefully that helps with some context.
Thank you. Much appreciated. All right. Well, I really want to be able to move forward on this tonight. I appreciate the concerns of Jackie and Michael. The council has given staff the direction to pursue this goal, and that is what our city manager has been doing for several months. Jackie, you did not vote for that in the beginning, so I know that you've always had concerns for this, and I understand that. The rest of us did vote for that direction. I believe that the residents of Placerville could care less about the exact split of ARPA funds between the city and the county. I think that they want to see some progress. I think that they are desperate to see some progress and to feel like their local leaders are taking this seriously. And also, you know, the number one reason that we have been pursuing this so energetically is because of the fire danger. And I hear it all the time from our residents that they want to see action. I would really like to be able to move forward on this tonight. Where is everybody? Do you have any alternatives for Jackie and Michael? Are there any alternative suggestions that you would like to put forward? I also, one other point, I do feel like, you know, longer the project is delayed, just in general, this is how it goes when it's doing hard things, the more likely it is to fall apart. And I do feel like we're kind of in a fragile balance to have the support that the project has right now. And I would hate to lose that momentum. Now, it's possible that we could approve a different amount or to not approve anything and consider this at another time. And maybe it would work out fine and the project would still move forward, but there's a risk that it may not. And I don't want to take that risk. I want to move forward on this. So.
Okay, I would just disagree that all of our residents want this to move forward. Certainly, we all talk to different populations of our residents, and I think that the residents want us to move forward in a fair way with consistent policies. Just giving the county what they want without asking for a fair share and a fair breakup here is not how I think the constituents I talk to want us to move forward. I put out that 6%, $41,250, and I'm very comfortable saying that that's our fair share. You know, I think that the community foundation, the upper room, you'll find out they might be able to close that gap. Everyone who's got a vested interest. I'm not ready to, you know, give up. I mean, essentially what you're saying is we're going to throw broadband to the side now, things that will benefit the most people in our city, and we're just going to do this. And I don't agree that everybody in our city would agree with that philosophy.
Linda, I see you at the podium, but public comment has closed, and we just do one public comment and one pass with the mic. She's our district supervisor, and we asked her. You know, Jackie, I hear you. One thing that I don't think can be understated is that the county did agree to pursue Perks Court outside of the city limits, and that was something that we insisted on, and we're pretty firm on, and that was a big concession, I think, on the point of the Board of Supervisors.
Okay. I would just like to disagree on that point. And the reason I would like to disagree is because the county did not involve us at all on the decision-making process of locations. The county brought us 6 locations, 5 were in the city, 1 are just outside the city. The county owns land, big chunks of land down in Cameron Park and other places. The county has basically said, we are going to disproportionately burden the city of Placerville. We are not even going to consider taking our fair share somewhere else and doing this. And I've heard that argument that, oh, you have the services. Well, I have news for you. Health and Human Services goes everywhere. You don't have to live in the city to receive those services at all. And so those arguments, they don't really hold any water. They could just as well put this in Cameron Park and have all the services go there and build that there. So to say that the county is bent over backwards coming up with a location, well, no, the county hasn't worked very hard at all, except for trying to put it in the city of Placerville.
I just want to say I really do appreciate all the hard work that has gone in. I know that there was a lot of work that went into the site selection. I know that there was a lot of deliberation at the county level, and I appreciate the courage of all of the supervisors that have done the politically hard thing for their districts to support this up until this point. And hopefully we can continue to support the effort.
Along those lines, too, it's also my understanding that the reason those sites were the only ones that could come up is because they were tied to how much the economy, and how much money they had. That's the only way that they could come up with the sites. So
they didn't evaluate anything outside of there. They didn't evaluate the Cameron Park property that they already own. There could very well be more viable sites. They just didn't want to talk about having it in another district.
We've been deliberating on this for a couple hours at this point. I think perhaps we're somewhat at a standstill or an impasse with where you...
Well, I think we're talking it through. There's a lot of points of view, and this is a very complex, multi-leveled issue that is being dumped on us at the last minute to try to work through. So it's going to take a lot of conversation to work through it.
One question that I do have, and this is beside point, but there wasn't any, it didn't go out for bid for the folks that were chosen to do the construction. Do any of you know anything about this, why they were chosen and without?
It's maybe, I don't know if one of you can answer that. I believe the county has a relationship with this company, and they did do the emergency proclamation, which allowed them to waive the bidding process to move forward with this. So.
And that's where I'm at with that. Is could it have come in lower? If it had somebody else, or does this company, are they experienced in doing this particular type of?
I have not worked with this company myself, but I assume that they are experienced in this type of work. And Wendy's shaking her head yes.
I can't see Wendy.
I know she's right behind the podium. If we wanted to request that we get different quotes, that we do any of these things, it will just,
No, it was a curious question more than anything. Why, and sometimes when you just get one bid, you get kind of a lopsided.
Yeah. I think we need to stop I'm not super comfortable with the back and forth. It's a little out of regular procedures. I know. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm willing to, let me do this and see where it goes. I would be willing to make a motion to approve the full funding with the caveat, with a memorandum of understanding with the county that the Broadway the homeless camp on Broadway will be shut down, and that whether or not everyone goes there or not, but that would be a shut down homeless camp with those inhabitants being the first to be able to go into the camp, and if they don't choose to go in, then they would be, then subject to law enforcement actions. But I would tie the money to the closure of the Broadway homeless camp.
Michael, I like where you're going with that. I have a feeling, and perhaps our Supervisor Thomas can chime in here, or Cleve, or Kimberly McAdams. I have a feeling that may need, the wording on that may need to be massaged a little bit because of the requirements with the federal and state funding. I was thinking,
Priority?
priority, I was thinking to approve the full funding request, provided that HHS and our city manager work together to develop the referral process or something along those lines. Would you be amenable to that?
I would only be interested in something that led to the permanent closure of that camp, because I think that is what the residents of Placerville want. Right. I think that's our highest need, and I think it's only fair that if we're going to shoulder a disproportionate amount of the funding, then that camp should be the first place that should be off the map. And whether or not those residents, unhoused residents, go into the facility or they choose to be subject to law enforcement, I think that to me would be how I would be comfortable with that vote, but only under those circumstances. Okay. And I think there's ways from a staff perspective to work through the policies and the law in order to do that. I wouldn't accept that would be outright not applicable.
Okay. Michael, when you say that, are you including that the county would do the cleanup of that site as well, or the city would be responsible for the cleanup, just so I kind of understand where you're going with that motion?
I think we would have to shoulder some burden on that too, Jackie.
Where are we going to come up with that money?
I don't know. I mean, that's the problem with, as to your point, Jackie, that's the problem with sending all the money, is that we'll virtually have nothing left. And I can't imagine that cleanup will be anything less than $100,000.
Cleve, how do you feel with that motion? Does that give you something that you can work with?
I am willing to take whatever you give me to work with. I mean, I think there are some concerns with that. I'm thinking about, for example, let's say there's 70 people up there. We take 60 and put in the new navigation center. What do we do with those other 10? But I think that I was thinking more along the lines of that those residents be given first priority moving forward. And every attempt to move them out of there and close down that camp. But I understand Michael's concerns, and whatever your direction is, I'll work with it the best I can to negotiate and work out an MOU with the county. So.
Okay. All right, Michael, did you want to say something?
Well, I'm the what if that is not. If that's not legally binding, where does that leave us? If you cannot do that, then is our participation void?
They get our money, but we get no guarantee.
Well, again, homeless is a big umbrella, and homelessness is a big umbrella in the county. And if we move them there, they're going to go right to the county, and they'll have to deal with it, and they'll go back and forth. And that, like one person said, Ms. Dion Perry said that we don't. It's not going to solve all our problems, and I agree with her on that. And that's clearly the experience of everybody else in this world that have not been figured out how to solve this whole problem.
And I think we're just going to have another homeless camp started. I'm sorry.
Well, and yes.
I mean, we're not. They're like Cleve said. They've got 60 beds, and we've got maybe we've got 70 people there. Yeah. But we've also got several other homeless camps that nobody's addressing.
Well, the idea is that people move through. They go into this, and
right.
then they go into rehab, they go into treatment, they go into long-term housing, they get reconnected with family members.
But in the meantime, how can we get 70 of them off the hill?
It's not going to be immediate.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to be immediate, but nothing's going to be immediate, and the alternative really is no progress.
No, that's not my point. My point is that if we don't have room for all the 70 people, to move off, we can't close it.
Well, based on the just statistics out there, not all will accept the empty beds, and when they don't accept the empty beds, then law enforcement can't kick in.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize too, and I'll ask our Chief Wren about this too, but I believe fully that there are some people that are here because we are allowing them to be here. Mm-hmm. If we are able, they will not go into this navigation center. And once we open that up and move those in that will go, we will try to force the others into that. If they do not go there, we will continue to work with them, and I believe that some will move out of our community and go to Sacramento or South Lake Tahoe or Auburn seeking other services when they find that we're not going to be as inviting and allowing the illegal camping to occur. I don't know what that number is. I am trying to be somewhat optimistic and thinking that this 60-bed number will help us get real close to that, but I just don't know until we do it.
And the reality is, a lot of these people have already had the opportunity to move out and move up and seek services. And so this gives us, the opportunity to help maybe encourage some of those that are on the bubble and to help some others figure out a different place.
So, Michael, can you restate your motion?
Yes, my motion would be to allocate the funding that's been the shortfall with the memorandum of understanding between the city of Placerville and the county of El Dorado that the homeless encampment on Upper Broadway would be shut down, and the unhoused residents of that area would be given first priority for beds within the navigation center, and those that chose not to would then be subject to whatever other, assuming any other law enforcement activities, or they could go somewhere else.
Okay. So if we amended this motion to say, to approve the funding request by El Dorado County for the full funding amount with an MOU in place that stipulates that referral prioritization will go to encampments with the highest fire danger, and the finding that the Broadway encampment has the highest fire danger. Does that suffice, Michael?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the main thing is that location would be shut down as a camp. We would cease to exist as a camp.
Okay. Okay. So is there a second? I'll second that.
I don't see a complete plan for our money. $287,000 is a lot of money, and I just don't see that we're getting everything we need in this motion and this agreement yet.
Okay. Any other comments?
I think that the prioritization and the ability to move them to give them the first swipe at it is good. I think that's a very short-lived thing, and I think that it will, because the reality is if they choose not to be there, they'll go to the county. If they choose not to go to the county, they'll go back to the city, and it'll be, we'll be playing that game as well, but we can actually enforce it then. And it won't just, if you move them out of Broadway, they're going to move to Placerville Drive. They're going to move to Weber Creek. They're going to be all over. So I don't think this is a one location issue, but it is the highest, and I think it has the highest priority, and I think they'll try and go back there. They'll try and go all sorts of places, and we just get the opportunity to, kind of put the pressure throughout the city and not just in one location.
Well, the burden's definitely going to fall on the police department.
Yeah. Well, they're already dealing with this. It's just a different type of call volume potentially. So it's in my opinion. So,
okay.
Yep, I'm done talking.
Okay. All right. We have a first and a second. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
No.
Vice Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody, for that good discussion and for all of those that made it here again. And with that, we adjourn our meeting until the next regular City Council meeting on August 9th. Have a good night.
And don't forget about National Night Out.
Oh, and National Night Out is coming up on August 2nd. All right.
Ooh.